My name is Ethan Duffy, and today I'll be presenting on the impacts of hybrid and electric cars on the environment. I contend that hybrid and electric cars have a significant negative impact on the environment. While many people, when considering buying a new car, consider things such as price, miles per gallon, fuel efficiency, some also consider the environmental impact of the cars they're purchasing. Options such as the Toyota Prius and the Chevy Volt make them feel good about their carbon footprint. I, however, contend that these are not quite as green as they appear. I will prove my point through two main reasons. The production of the cars is in fact an incredibly dirty process, and the production of the electricity that powers these cars is also an incredibly dirty process. Starting with the production of the cars, the aluminum metals, a very lightweight metal, used in production of the Prius most significantly, is an incredibly difficult process when compared to heavier metals such as steel. Because of this, the creation of aluminum pieces in cars releases an incredible amount of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Next is the batteries that power these cars. According to New York Times, most hybrid/electric cars are powered by nickel hydride batteries. These metals are mined in China, which is notorious for ignoring environmental safeguards, particularly their use of acid in mining nickel from the ground. This acid then pours into the rivers that fuel farms and fisheries, tainting the water supplies, causing significant harm among the people and the environment there. My next point, that the production of electricity that powers these cars is an incredibly dirty process. According to the EIA, more than 45% of all power in America is powered by coal. Coal is a very famous pollutant, infamous I should say, for how much greenhouse gases it produces. The USC then breaks down how across America this percentage of electricity is produced. In places such as in the Michigan area, more than 70% of all power is produced by coal. In California, however, less than 10% of this power is produced by coal. This means that while in Michigan, driving a hybrid/electric car, while you are not paying for gas necessarily, the power that you are paying for comes from incredibly dirty sources. In California, these numbers are much better, but in California, more than 50% of energy is produced by natural gas, which is also very dirty. The collection of natural gas from the ground comes from a process known as fracking, which has considerable environmental concerns. The National Agriculture and Rural Development Policy Center raises concerns about the impact of this drilling, particularly the release of methane gas into the atmosphere, a known pollutant. Further elaborating on the UCS study of power grid composition in the United States, they find that the best case scenario is a surprising 73 miles per gallon over the average over the use of a hybrid electric car in the area. But the worst case is 34 mpg, which is less than the high-end gasoline-fueled cars. I conclude that through the production of the cars themselves and the electricity that power these cars, hybrid electric cars are not quite as clean as most would think. Thank you.
All right, Ethan, you've identified the subject and the proposition clearly. The structural stuff is all fine. It's easy to follow in the body of the speech, so there are not a lot of problems there. Your first point is about the environmental impact of producing the vehicles themselves. There's not really any evidence presented on the aluminum process that you talk about and how complicated or dirty it is. There's no way of measuring that. It's basically your say-so and assertion on that point, and it seems like you could probably do with some evidence on that particular point, especially something that quantifies it, but even at a minimal point, something that explains the assertion that you're making about the process being particularly dirty. Now, on the issue about the mining, I think that was a lot clearer, that there is some information here that that it's, the mining processes use some acids, for instance, that are potentially damaging, but it's only a brief quote that makes reference to that, and after that, it's largely an assumption about what the pollution is going to be like, and, not to put a fine point on it, but the pollution is in China. Is it a worldwide issue, or is it just the Chinese who are polluting and have acid runoff on their crops and their lands there? Not that I wish anything bad on those folks, but for instance, it's not the same thing as the worldwide global warming issue that you refer to on the second point. If there was some information on that, I think it needed to be developed a little bit more. And of course, none of it is really quantified. The second point, however, you do a much better job developing and finding some quantification on. The explanation of coal use around the country I thought was pretty clear. The explanation about how California is a little bit different because our electricity doesn't come primarily from coal, so I thought that helped. The follow-up that the natural gas that we're getting the electricity from is tied into fracking, and that there is methane involved in the fracking process. I think that is a good link there. Same sort of thing. I think you could use a little bit of quantification on that. The whole explanation about the best and worst case scenario needs to be shown that, in essence, that it only works at saving if we're getting the best case scenario for the electric and hybrid cars, because if we're getting just average gas mileage from the hybrid cars, which, by the way, I think is probably true given the way that most people drive in California. It's not like you're getting on the highway and driving for 70 miles an hour straight for an hour where your efficiency would be really high. I think you have the stop and go kind of driving much more frequently, which means that you're going to get the lower efficiency. I think that's the way it works. So your explanation on that, I think, could be elaborated on a little bit. There's some ways to find some information. I like the interesting tie-in to the fracking argument. Again, like I said, I didn't think there was a lot of proof except for the methane being released into the atmosphere. But if people are worried about their carbon footprint, that seems to be one of the reasons that they should be concerned when they're buying a hybrid vehicle. And I thought you explained that okay.